The ship vibrated faintly as it locked into orbit around Earth. Inside the observation deck of the Zenthos Academy's intergalactic field research vessel, a dozen alien students floated, perched, or otherwise distributed themselves in various positions that defied gravity and human ergonomics. Weslan Hargrove stood near the edge of the massive viewport, arms folded, trying not to sneeze. "Do not touch the glass," said Instructor Velm, a tall, moss-green being whose skin pulsed with gentle light. "Earth's pathogens may already be on your skin." "I didn't touch it," Weslan replied, wiping his nose with a tissue. "And I'm not the one licking the air." At his comment, a small, spherical alien named Hro tilted mid-air and blinked all 8 of his eyes. "I am sampling the volatile compounds for chemical analysis. Human air is unusually aromatic." "Yeah," Weslan muttered. "That's because it's spring. Pollen. Dust. Mold. The usual." He sniffled again and pulled another tissue from his pocket. Velm turned slowly toward him. "Are you experiencing symptoms?" "Just allergies," Weslan said, his voice congested. "Happens every year. I forgot to pack my antihistamines." Velm's body stiffened. "You are symptomatic?" "I said it's allergies. Not sick. You are leaking from the nasal cavity." "That's normal." Velm didn't answer. Instead, he extended a limb and activated a holographic console. Symbols spiraled across the screen, and soft alarms began to buzz. The alien student started to shift nervously. Hro whirled in place, his eyes blinking in a fast sequence. "Do not be alarmed," Velm said, in a tone that suggested the opposite. "We are initiating quarantine protocol Delta 7. All humans must be contained and tested." Weslan raised both hands. Wait. You're not serious. It's just hay fever. You can't quarantine me for that." "You are the only human on board," Velm replied. "Containment will be efficient." The floor beneath Weslan shimmered, then hardened into a translucent dome. A low hum filled the air. Weslan turned in a slow circle, now encased in a bubble the size of a small room. "Seriously," he said, "this is ridiculous." "I didn't even sneeze that hard." Hro floated closer to the dome, eyes pressed to the surface. "He appears mildly distressed. Is this a worsening of symptoms?" "I'm annoyed, not dying," Weslan said. "Someone get me a box of tissues and let me out." But Velm wasn't listening. He was now deep in conversation with the ship's medical AI, which had already begun scanning every millimeter of the dome's interior. Weslan sat down on the small bench that had been generated with him and sighed. Eventually, after what felt like an hour, Velm returned. "Your immune response is elevated. White blood cell count is high. Pulmonary tissue shows signs of irritation. I told you. Allergies. We have no evidence of such a condition in your medical file. Because I didn't think I'd need to log sneezes during springtime on an intergalactic student exchange application." Velm stared at him. "You may be patient 0. Oh, for look, I've been sneezing since I was 5. Every year. It's not a virus. It's my body reacting to tiny particles in the air. Pollen. Trees. Flowers." The alien students murmured among themselves. Hro tapped the dome twice with a small appendage. "That sounds like an immunological malfunction." "It's not a malfunction, it's just how some bodies work." Velm turned back to the console. "We are preparing you for transport to the isolation wing. You will be tested further." "No," Weslan said, standing. "You're not listening. You're overreacting. I'm not contagious. I've had this every April for 25 years. A soft has filled the air." Weslan blinked. "What was that?" "Decontamination mist," Velm said. "Please do not inhale deeply." Weslan immediately started coughing. "Oh, great. That helps." Within minutes, the dome began to move, sliding along a track toward the medical wing. Alien students followed, whispering in hushed clicks and hums, recording data and exchanging theories. Weslan rubbed his temples. Inside the medical wing, the dome dissolved and robotic arms extended. Weslan backed away. "You're not poking me with anything until I talk to someone who understands human biology. Your physiology is being cross-referenced with the galactic database," Velm said. "Which probably doesn't even include the word ragweed." One of the arms tapped his arm with a cold sensor. A screen lit up. "Elevated temperature," Velm noted. "I was in a plastic bubble for an hour. It's warm in there. Heart rate is elevated. I'm stressed. Respiratory rate increased. Because you're stressing me out." The analysis continued. Blood samples were drawn. Images of his lungs were taken. After another hour, Veln approached with a serious expression. We have ruled out major interstellar pathogens. However, we cannot confirm that your condition is benign, because you've never seen allergies. We have no precedent for this phenomenon. In Xanthos physiology, foreign particles are filtered before they reach sensory organs. Lucky you, Weslan muttered. Veln gestured toward the corner of the room, where a small cot had unfolded. You will remain under observation for the next 48 Earth hours. You're quarantine happy, you know that? Veln didn't respond. The door sealed behind him. 2 hours later, Pro reappeared at the glass. I brought you a recreation module, he chirped. Weslan looked. It was a floating cube with shifting colors and loud, pulsing sounds. Thanks, but I don't think that's going to help. It emits calming frequencies. It sounds like a blender fighting a lawnmower. Pro floated in silence for a moment. I've never met a species that reacts to nature this way. You and me both. Later, a second alien named Jella, tall and thin with skin like polished stone, entered the room. I have synthesized a compound based on your immune profile. It may reduce the histamine response. You made antihistamines? I do not know what that is. Never mind. I'll try it. The pill was a strange, translucent rectangle. Weslan swallowed it and sat back. 15 minutes later, he was breathing more easily. It worked. Then you were cured? No. It just controls the symptoms. This comes back every year. Jella frowned. That seems inefficient. Tell me about it. The next morning, Veln returned with a team of students. Jella stood beside him, holding a data pad. We have concluded your condition is seasonal, Veln said stiffly. It is not contagious. Weslan nodded. Told you. We are adjusting our database accordingly. Can I go now? Veln hesitated. Your presence caused considerable concern. We must ensure this does not happen again. Weslan stood, stretching his back. Next time, just ask before you build a dome around me. Veln turned to his students. We will draft a new protocol for terrestrial immunological anomalies. As Weslan walked toward the exit, Pro floated beside him. Will you sneeze again next year? Without a doubt. Fascinating, Pro said. You are like a biological calendar. Weslan chuckled. Yeah, that's one way to look at it. He stepped into the hallway, heading for his quarters, hoping to catch a warm drink and some rest. Behind him, the alien students were already deep in conversation, drafting a new chapter in their galactic field manual, one that began with a sneeze. 3 days after the incident, Weslan stood barefoot on the botanical observation deck, squinting at a fern-like plant that was trying to sting him. You know, he said, stepping back as one of the fronds twitched, on Earth, most plants don't actively try to tag you. That one isn't trying, replied Rilix, a lanky student from the Helvern system, whose multiple elbow joints allowed him to fold into unnatural shapes. It's defensive. You startled it. I sneezed nearby, Weslan said, not exactly a hostile act. You startled it, Rilix repeated. Weslan crossed his arms. You sure it won't spit acid or something? Only if it mistakes you for a fungus, said Rilix. Which, given your recent medical quarantine, it might. The ship's arboretum was humid, luminescent, and mildly disorienting. Plants from over 50 worlds grew in curated zones, each maintained by climate regulators and monitored by a rotating student crew. Weslan had been assigned here after Veln decided he needed low-stimulation duties until his biological volatility could be further studied. So far, he had watered a carnivorous vine that tried to digest its own pot, narrowly avoided being rooted to the floor by a creeping moss, and now found himself being evaluated by a fern with trust issues. He crouched near a bulbous plant with translucent leaves. This one's not going to attack, is it? It's sleeping, Rilix said. Don't wake it. Weslan stood again. I feel like I'm walking through a garden designed by paranoid engineers. Rilix blinked all 4 of his eyes in sequence. You're one to talk. Still sore about the pollen thing? Your body reacted to local spores by overproducing internal fluids. That's not a reassuring trait. It's not a threat to anyone. No, but it's unsettling, like a machine that randomly sprays coolant for no reason. Weslan sighed. Your metaphors need work. Before Rilix could reply, the deck doors hissed open and Jella entered, holding a thin device that projected a rotating 3D model of human lungs. I need another sample, she said without preamble. The inhibitor compound is metabolizing faster than anticipated. I feel fine, Weslan said. No sneezing. No itching. No dome required. You're not under suspicion, she replied. This is for research. We're mapping the allergen binding sites in your blood. I'm not a lab rat. Jella tilted her head. You volunteered for the interspecies sciences exchange. I thought I'd be studying alien diplomacy, not becoming a case study. You are doing both, she said. Without waiting for consent, she extended a scanner. Weslan flinched, but the device simply hovered near his neck and beeped. Still stable, she said. But your histamine levels are climbing. Maybe because I'm standing in a room full of alien plants. That's the point, said Rilix. We're testing if exposure to foreign flora triggers cross-reactions. Weslan turned. You're using me as an allergen detector? You're uniquely qualified. I'm uniquely irritated. Jella tapped her pad. You're scheduled for a full respiratory profile tomorrow. Try not to inhale the blue pollen cloud near Sector 6. It hasn't been classified yet. Noted, Weslan muttered. She turned to leave, then paused. By the way, Veln approved your reinstatement to communal dining. You're no longer restricted to sterile meals. Finally, I've been living off nutrient paste and crackers. You're the only one who's complained, said Rilix. Because the rest of you eat things that taste like insulation foam. As Jella exited, a low chime rang from the far wall. Rilix straightened. Time for atmospheric turnover. The arboretum's about to shift to nighttime cycle. Within seconds, the lights dimmed and the temperature dropped. Bioluminescent stalks began to glow, casting eerie patterns across the floor. A distant chirping echoed through the chamber. Weslan looked around. It's like someone turned the ship into a haunted greenhouse. Some species only photosynthesize under specific spectral conditions, Rilix said, already adjusting a set of dials on the control panel. Night cycle triggers secondary metabolic phases. Weslan moved toward the exit. I'm not hanging around for that. If any of these plants start singing, I'm out. He made his way down the corridor, passing a trio of students discussing soil enrichment ratios. None of them acknowledged him, but one subtly rotated away as he passed, as if avoiding accidental contact. By the time he reached his quarters, the hallway had shifted to low light mode. He keyed open the door and stepped inside. The room was small but functional, with a sleeping pod, a retractable desk, and a wall display that alternated between Earth landscapes and galactic star maps. He collapsed onto the edge of his pod and exhaled. A soft tone chimed from his wall console. Weslan Hargrove, said the filtered voice of the ship's AI. You have a pending communication from Instructor Veln. Priority level moderate. Play it. Veln's image appeared, slightly distorted by the transmission. You are scheduled to report to the Comparative Physiology Lab at third cycle misshift. A new study is being initiated on adaptive immune variability. Your participation is requested. Weslan rolled his eyes. But it's not optional. The message ended. He leaned back and stared at the ceiling. Hours later, the lab was colder than expected. Not freezing, just unwelcoming. Dozens of instruments lined the walls. A central platform contained a reclining chair that looked suspiciously like a dentist's seat crossed with a massage table. You're not going to poke me with anything sharp, right? Weslan said. No incisions, replied a student named Drexel, whose body resembled a bundle of wet cables. We're conducting stimulus response tests using visual and olfactory triggers. Weslan raised an eyebrow. You're going to show me pictures and wave smells at me. Yes. I could have done that from my room. But not while being scanned in 22 spectrums. He sat down warily. As the chair reclined, a ring of sensors descended around his head. The first image appeared, a serene forest on Earth, early morning, mist rising between the trees. Pleasant, Weslan said. A puff of air released a faint scent, pine needles and damp soil. Still pleasant. Next image, a field of blooming wildflowers. He sniffed. Okay, that one's risky. Sensors beeped. Histamine elevation noted, Drexel said. Yeah, that'll happen. A new scent puffed through. Sharp and bitter. Ugh. What is that? Extract from the bloom stalks of the Riex plant, Drexel said. Used in Helvern cuisine. It smells like scorched rubber. Interesting. No allergic response. Because my nose is too offended to react. The test continued. Some images triggered memories, childhood hikes, spring fairs, the time he'd accidentally fallen into a bush full of flowering nettles. Others were entirely unfamiliar. Alien landscapes, strange bioluminescent growths, vast fungal plains under foreign stars. After an hour, the sensors retracted. Conclusion. Weslan asked, You are highly reactive to Earth-originating organic particulates, Drexel said, but show no cross-reactivity to any known interstellar analogs. So I'm only allergic to home. It would appear so. Weslan stood. That's poetic. And inconvenient. As he left the lab, he caught sight of a trio of students watching him from across the corridor. One of them whispered something, and the others nodded in agreement. Back in his quarters, a message was waiting. This time from Hro. I have constructed a simulation of Earth's seasonal cycles based on your medical responses. Would you assist in calibrating it? Weslan typed a quick reply. Only if it doesn't involve sniffing anything. The next cycle, he found himself inside a holodeck, surrounded by a perfect replica of a suburban park in early spring. The trees were too symmetrical, the birds a bit too coordinated, but the sunlight had the right warmth. Pro buzzed beside him, eyes rotating. I modeled this environment using your biometrics and regional data from your intake file. Weslan walked a few paces. Pretty good. But the air's too clean. I can introduce trace allergens. Let's not do that. Pro floated closer. You are the first being I've met whose biology treats its own planet like an irritant. Weslan looked up at the artificial sky. Funny, isn't it? Confusing, Pro replied. But instructive. They stood in silence as a programmed breeze stirred the digital trees. Weslan exhaled through his nose. No reaction. For once. Maybe next time, he said, you can simulate summer. Just leave out the mosquitoes. Pro blinked. What is a mosquito? Weslan shuddered. Let's not go there. Weslan stood in front of the galley's nutrient dispenser, watching it extrude something beige that claimed to be a protein-integrated lentil analog. It jiggled once, then stopped moving. He poked it with a fork. It jiggled again. He didn't touch it after that. Across from him, two students from the Esteran system were narrowing their ocular ridges at his tray. One of them opened a pouch of what looked like metallic sand and poured it into a bowl of clear syrup. The mixture hissed. Weslan sat down at the far end of the table. I heard your blood produced a reactive mist, said one of them. No, Weslan said flatly. That didn't happen. Then what was the containment report about? Pollen. Earth has plants. Some people sneeze. That's all. The Esteran leaned toward his companion and emitted a low vibration. Weslan stabbed his lentil analog, missed, and tried again. The ship's dining hall had more variety than the sterile meals he'd been stuck with, but still managed to make everything taste like it had been filtered through bureaucracy. A moment later, Drexel entered, dragging what looked like a portable diagnostic unit behind him 2 meters long, covered in vents and blinking lights. Weslan blinked. Are you planning to eat that? No. This is part of the final phase of your immune study. You've been cleared from quarantine, but we require a comprehensive baseline reading before you return to unrestricted areas. I've already been poked and scanned more than the flight deck. This is non-invasive, Drexel replied, adjusting a dial. Mostly. Sit still. Here. Drexel activated the unit. A soft hum filled the air, and a faint blue light scanned over Weslan's torso. Your thermoregulation is within human norms, Drexel said. No further evidence of elevated cytokine levels. But your systemic response to foreign organics remains unusually volatile. Again, seasonal allergies. You do realize you've studied me more than your own species, right? That's precisely why it's useful. You represent a deviation we failed to anticipate. You're an exception to our predictive models. Weslan leaned back, avoiding the light. Glad to know I'm an exception in sneezing. Drexel tapped a control. We also logged your exposure to the Rex compound. Your body ignored it entirely. That contradicts our assumptions about cross-reactivity. Weslan squinted. So I'm allergic to home, but not to alien plants? Correct. We believe your immune system has adapted to treat familiar threats as dangerous and unfamiliar ones as benign. It's a form of selective overfamiliarity. That's not comforting. It is, however, fascinating. The machine beeped and powered down. Drexel reached into a compartment and produced a small, thin strip in a sealed packet. What's that? A desensitization patch. It introduces trace amounts of common Earth allergens into your system over time. It may reduce your seasonal reactions. Wait, you made allergy immunotherapy? We read your medical literature. It was crude. We improved it. Weslan eyed the patch. You're saying this might fix it? Possibly. Or it might cause temporary hives. He peeled open the packet and stuck the patch to his upper arm. Let's roll the dice. That evening, The ship's central recreation chamber was dimmed for a scheduled cultural session, a rotating event where students showcased aspects of their homeworlds. Weslan hadn't planned to attend, but Veln had added a reminder to his schedule under the category Post-Quarantine Reintegration. He arrived late. The lights were low, and a group of Muric students were playing something that resembled a harp made of bone and vibrating crystal. The music was oddly hypnotic melancholy, but not sad. Weslan found a chair near the back and sat down quietly. Jella spotted him and walked over with a small container. Reaction? None yet. Maybe it's working. She handed him the container. Inside were 3 small capsules, each labeled with a color-coded band. Supplemental doses. Take one every 24 hours. They'll support the patch's effect. Weslan turned them over in his hand. Jella sat next to him. You're the only subject we've ever studied who reacted so aggressively to their own biosphere. I'm honored. She tilted her head. I meant that literally. The performance ended, and the lights brightened slightly. A student from the aquatic oxygen subclass stepped forward and began projecting holograms of underwater cities built in methane seas. The room was quiet as the images shifted glittering lights, strange marine creatures, and translucent towers that pulsed with internal currents. Weslan leaned toward Jella. Ever think maybe we're not built for the same galaxy? She considered for a moment. No species is. We all bend to survive it. Some just do so more loudly. He chuckled. That's fair. By the time the cultural session ended, the room had filled with low conversation. Several students approached Weslan with cautious curiosity. One offered a fruit that looked like a cube of green glass. Another asked if he could intentionally trigger another histamine surge for study. He politely declined both. Later, Pro found him near the exit. You seem less irritated. I'm not sneezing, if that's what you mean. Your skin tone has stabilized. Your breathing cadence is even. You've been monitoring me? Only passively. I added you to my ambient health index. Weslan narrowed his eyes. Should I be concerned? No. You are now the control variable for all human data models on this ship. He exhaled. Terrific. The following morning, Weslan woke with no itching, no congestion, and for the first time in weeks no dome-shaped quarantine field forming around him. He walked the corridor without anyone flinching. No one whispered. No one scanned him mid-stride. For the first time, he felt like a student again, not a walking case file. He passed the arboretum and glanced inside. The defensive fern was resting. The moss had been trimmed. The air shimmered with faint humidity, but it didn't choke him. He kept walking. At midday, he found himself in the study lounge, seated at a terminal surrounded by students from 5 different systems. No one avoided him. No one sanitized the seat after he used it. Rillick slid into the space beside him. You're not leaking anymore. Thanks for noticing. We updated the ship database. Allergic rhinitis now has an entry under terrestrial immune anomalies. Let me guess. I'm the picture. Your nasal cross-section, actually. Weslan sighed. At least future humans won't get bubble-wrapped. Unlikely, Rillick said. But they'll be studied more gently. Weslan sat back, stretching his arms. So that's it. I'm officially not a threat to galactic health. Correct. You are now classified as non-infectious but unpredictable. I'll take it. That evening, a notification arrived on his console. A small message, embedded with an official seal. Your medical status has been cleared. All restrictions lifted. No further observation required. Weslan closed the message and stood up. No more decontamination missed. No more surprise scans. No more floating cubes pulsing with calming frequencies. Just a human, in space, mildly allergic to his own planet, but cleared for interstellar interaction. He headed for the common deck, where planetary simulations were being queued for recreation hours. Hey, he said to the console. Load Earth. Early summer. Ocean breeze. Light humidity. The system chirped. A moment later, the room filled with the sound of waves and the scent of salt. Weslan stepped in, barefoot on warm simulated sand. No sneezing. No itching. Just the breeze. He smiled, deeply and quietly, and walked toward the horizon.